Hey, good morning, everybody. Just uh, just doing a little hello, check-in, what's going on kind of thing. Quiet again for a while since the last episode I put out on the show, and just kind of in general. Just a bit of a heads up, letting people know what's going on with me. Getting ready for a big move right now, moving up to DC with a couple family members, which is definitely a big change for me. Looking forward to leaving Virginia, but yeah, it's crazy. I don't know, I guess some good updates. Going back to school soon. Going back for psychology. That's kind of what I've always wanted to do is directly work with people. It's funny when I was a child, I was like 7 years old. I wanted to do psychology. I wanted to be a therapist. And each time in my life, when I've had those big opportunities to go down that route or do something else, I go the other route every time. And I pretty much quit my career. I was a knowledge manager. I worked with documentation, built websites, built automation with, software. You press this thing does this, and then you notifies this person, updates this thing here. I've got a very decent resume, but yeah, if you guys know me at all and you heard anything from me, I know I haven't talked about it really, but I just broke, man. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't be a part of this like corrupt corporate world anymore. It was just so incredibly unhealthy. That the top leadership just always felt dead set on ensuring we can't keep the contract. It's something I can't understand. I'll give you my quick scenario, the thing I went through for several years in simplest form, right? I manage all our documentation, but I don't write a lot of it, right? So the boss would say, "Hey, Micah, what's the status on our documentation?" I say, "Okay, well, you know, uh, the majority of our documentation is out of date. The authors of the documents refuse to do their job. They won't update it when I come to them. They say they're too busy. And then I tell you that none of the documentation is getting done because the authors aren't doing it, right? They're not writing the documents, they're not updating the documents, which means that I don't review the documents. I don't make sure they're good to go. I don't work with the government to get them approved. And none of my stuff happens, right? Because they haven't done their piece. And so the boss, this is pretty easy now, right? The boss has what we call a fork in the road at this point. He says, I either address the guys who aren't doing their job and then they do their job, or, hell rains on them kind of thing, or I don't do that. And I just keep asking you what the status of the documents is every couple of weeks. And you can imagine the unhealthy scenario. You're just like, your brain broke. Your brain's broken every day. You come in and you failed. You can't succeed because all the people have to do their job. They won't do it because your boss who needs to do his job, he won't do it. Somehow it keeps coming down on Micah. You couldn't get them to do their jobs? Are you kidding me? Like, what universe are we in right now? So in its simplest form, I went through that for the last 4 years with some other stuff that it just doesn't matter anymore. I moved on from it essentially, but moving to DC, uh, going back to school again, the perks of being ex-military. Holy crap. The military is paying for me to go back to school to get a whole nother degree, paying for my books, my tuition. They'll give me money just to live while I'm, going back to school. It's incredible opportunities. You know, I hope if you're out there and your children have any interest in the military, just incredible opportunities. All right. So yeah. So going back to school, I'm finally doing it. You know, on some level, I've been making my way towards this for the last couple of years. Um, I started my incredibly small YouTube channel called Love People Enough, probably a year and a half ago, something like that, 2 years ago. Okay, I probably should just say 2 years at this point. It's got to be 2 years because it was under the Biden era. Stuff was bad. Stuff was bad. If you were paying attention, stuff was not great. Um, the environment was unhealthy. The amount of friends I lost to, the blue side radicalism, to Democratic radicalism is out of control. I lost my best buddy at work. She let me know what she thought of white people. Let me see. I lost my neighbor who used to walk by my house every day, multiple times a day, walking his little dog. Anytime I'd see him, like through the cracks, the fence, I'd be like, "Hey, what's going on?" He's, "Hey, my God." He'd come on over. We had over for dinner, right? He hung out on my porch countless times. Yep. I lost kid Zach I've known for almost 20 years since he was, I think, about 15. Oh, he was 13 years old, I think, when I met him. Yeah, he became radicalized, decided I was an evil Nazi, hateful, monstrous human being. Yeah, it was bad, man. It was a bad time, you know. I remember, oh, geez, I remember I lost this other buddy too. Here I am packing, getting ready for this move. And I come across this postcard from this guy, Gungeon. I was like, oh man, it's a buddy of mine. And I think, oh man, is he still a buddy of mine? We worked at the Pentagon together for a couple of years. Man, I remember the last time I talked to him was about, I don't know, a year and a half ago. I was kind of a rough draft working on this like physical mental wellness program, with a big focus on, um, truth and critical thinking, being able to, irrelevant of party affiliation, for example, group affiliation, to be able to tell what right and wrong is. But I think we've lost that. I don't think it's, our morals and our values. I don't think they guide most of us anymore. It's just, whatever our party tells us, we find a way to fit our values, right, into what we have to somehow support. Crazy stuff. But yeah, I remember I was telling him about it. I was very excited. And I remember he said to me something like, that's probably going to be a problem, right? So, what do you mean? He's like, you know how it is. You're a white male. You're creating a program to tell people how to live their lives. I don't know if that's going to go over so well, buddy. Wow. What a world we're in now. What a world. I'm going to tell you, I don't, you talk about, I just, I'm about to spiral into a white privilege piece real quick. That's probably not healthy. You talk about stuff, you hear stuff like that, and it's so hollow, right? I think about me, right? We were poor when we came to Block Island. We were poor. My father was working multiple jobs at a time just to pay the bills. When we moved to Block Island, I think we stayed in like 10 or 12 houses in our first couple of years. That because we couldn't find a place to live, we couldn't afford it. We lived in basements and attics, right? We were pretty poor. You know, I wasn't wealthy when I left my home. I didn't have any, money in my pocket. Nobody was like, here's thousands of dollars or here's like that. I went to the military. I suffered. That's the tough stuff over there, man. It's no joke. I've been all over Europe. I've had bullets come so close to my face I could feel them. I've pushed a man's brains back into his head, something I will never forget for as long as I live. And I came back, and I remember it. I remember it. The first thing I remember about America when I came back was how unfriendly everybody was, especially the women. I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know what's going on with that whole other deal over there. You're in Italy, right? You're in Italy or Europe. You walk in, into a store and they're like, "Hey, Michael, hey, good to see you. Hey, how you been? How's the family? Hey, what's going on?" In America, they're like, "Next, you don't have your ticket." I don't know, man. It's incredible. I started this show off, and I had a co-host. I mean, I guess we're still friends. He's just gone. He just vanished. Literally doesn't exist. He was basically never around for episodes. But I started this. Yeah, I started the show, right, and lost my first co-host. He was never around. He wasn't available. Couldn't put the time. Didn't put in the work. It is what it is. It is what it is. My second co-host, shit show. I can't even go there. But the reality is, I've struggled all this time. I constantly struggle to find someone, a co-host who wants to do this stuff on a regular basis. Um, and I get it. When you talk about what's going on in life, it's not easy, especially depending on what your situation is. I'm pretty set in the fact that I could probably talk about anything I want here, and I'm going to. We're going to have some big talks soon. You're going to have a lot of talks about addiction here on the show, the struggles that we go through with our friends and family, the struggle we go through ourselves, the difficulties that creates in life. You're going to see some big changes, I think. There have been some big important subjects like addiction, for example, isolation, right? We have specifically not talked about those things on my show in respect. Um, for, well, irrelevant. Let's just say moving forward, we're going to have really, really interesting stuff. At least I hope so. Yeah, I'm rambling again, but I'm not going to edit these things out either. If you don't like them, so be it. I can't do it right now. Right now, every morning, I'm going to try to post something quick about how I'm feeling, what's going on in general, and we're just going to keep it moving. If you are interested in trying to be a co-host for my show, you want to do a single episode or something like that, please come on. If you're Democrat, I prefer that. Yeah, just know I'm always going to be polite and respectful as best as I can with stuff. Yeah, but I, I'm independent, but I lean Republican. I guess it's harder and harder to say that these days. I'm not a fan of Trump. I think you guys know that. I think someone like Trump is a threat to America. I think people like Mamdani are a threat to America, right? I don't need to only paint the other side as bad. That's insane. That's crazy, right? But yeah, this has been quite an adventure over these last couple months. So yeah, I think we'll just do these short little check-ins. We'll just this is what's going on with me right now. Right now, we're about to do a whole bunch of packing today. Today, we got 3 cold plunges. We're gonna clean out. We're gonna, you know, get them ready to move. I got an 8x8 foot outdoor sauna. We're gonna clean that sucker out too. Get that ready to move. And yeah, and then we got some chilling later on. We got some hardcore chilling tonight. If any of you know what Crimson Desert is, Holy Mother of God, that's right. That's the chill time. But yeah, we're definitely going to talk about some crazy stuff coming up soon too. Like I struggle, guys. I struggle. You have no idea how much I struggle. I kind of wish this was a little lower there. Right? I do. The amount of insane like Jew hate, for example, I see everywhere, unbelievable. And I'm just gonna throw this out there because it's something that's starting to really bother me. For the last 6 months or so, maybe more, every time I have someone who's going to come on my show, either as a co-host or just do an episode, the moment they realize that I'm not an enemy of the Jews, they vanish. The show never happens. And I usually never even hear from them again. I'm talking Republican, Democrat, Independent. It's absolutely shocking stuff to me. You want to come on, you want to talk about how much you dislike Bibi Netanyahu? That's cool. Yeah, he fucked up. I don't know how he's still in authority, from sitting in front of Congress telling us, Saddam has weapons of mass destruction to signing off on releasing the mastermind of October 7th, Yahya Sinwar, for a terrorist trade, right? There are real reasons to say a man like this has no business in authority anymore. The fact that, he's continuing is shocking. You can have like real, solid, honest feedback like that. That's real. That's cool. But when we're when all you can see is Israel bad, right? You can't see anything else whatsoever. And everything somehow leads back to the Jews. You lost it, man. You've lost it. You know, uh, it's crazy, right? Growing up, we understood what the Nazis were, right? We understand who the Jews were. There was no confusion on that. And now I know this to be true, sad as this is. How many of my old friends, and you even are listening right now, everything you talk about somehow ends in the Jews, right? Somehow the Jews are responsible. The Jews are responsible. You'll use the word Zionist, right? Or even Israeli. But, sometimes those are correct. But most of it's hate. Most of it's brain broken rot. You can't tell the difference between right and wrong anymore, and, if you're brave, please come be on my show. Come talk it. Tell me how I'm wrong. I will happily talk through any of these things. I promise. I think those who truly know me know that I'm a good man with a good heart. You got a good story to tell? Well, let's talk. You've got an opinion you want to talk through, or let's go, man. I'm good. There's a thing I look for when I interview with people, or when I talk with people in general. There's a certain point. There's like yeah, maybe I'll learn what this is called when I go back to school for psychology, a couple months, fall semester. I call it break-in. There's a piece when you interact with someone and you're talking about something that's like incorrect, that that they've said, or that you're telling them something that contradicts something that they know or believe. There's a thing that they do, and it's just like it's like the eyes, like they change. Something changes about them, and they're no longer able to engage with that piece. And I'll use this. I have a famous example. You know who you are. You're probably not watching my stuff right now because you were very upset at me, and vice versa. I had this argument with a family member recently, and we're talking about Mom Donnie, okay? In its simplest form. I know there's a whole episode dedicated to him. Now, my statement was, if Mom Donnie had ties, him and his family have ties to terrorism, actual ties. I don't know what I'm saying. So, correct or not, if that's the case, would it make sense to not support him? And this person said to me, well, why don't we just wait and see how he does? What? So you're telling me in a scenario where a person him and his family have ties to terrorists, you think you're just going to dismiss it just because he's a Democrat? You're just going to, and again, we're not saying that he does. Okay. That is a whole big thing. Okay. I lean towards that. Yes. But I realize there's a good, healthy debate to be had there. The point was, this person was incapable in a scenario like that simply because if you said to me, okay, now again, I'm independent, but I lean Republican. This, again, maybe it's a little trickier because I'm not all bought in. I realize that's what it is. But, if you like, big, we don't need to do the analogy. I think you guys kind of get it. Long story short is, even afterwards, like that spiraled into this huge discussion of just not being able to trust the other person because you couldn't trust in a scenario where, and we know they're bad. Does it make sense for them to have a chance to rule? That's an easy no for me. That's an easy no. I think that's easy for many people. Later on, we talked about that. She said to me, I was put on the spot. I didn't know what to do. I said, on the spot. Every conversation you ever have is on the spot, right? Again, it came to a point where we were talking about if he and his family had ties to terrorism, would it make sense to not support him? She couldn't say yes under any circumstances. That's what I told her. I said, I don't understand how being on the spot makes that difficult for you. If I loved Super Bob, the Republican, right? And you said, well, it's possible. We've heard it's possible that Super Bob's, he's a pedophile. He's a pedophile. And I said, oh, crap. I don't think he's a pedophile. I think that's not real. And you were like, well, what if it is true? Would you then not support him? Right, here I am on the spot, right? Obviously, I wouldn't support him. Whoa, see how easy that was? Obviously, you kidding me? Oh, I'd be one of his harshest critics at that point, especially since I had supporting him. I think that'd be quite the betrayal. But again, on the spot, that was a big thing. But on some level, that's what's going on. Something is broken in people. There's something just broken where the right and wrong, it just doesn't come in. It just doesn't. And if it comes in, it's usually some like poisonous, toxic, brain broken concept of right and wrong, where a simple child's questions will show how incorrect that they are, right? I always love that, right? Like child's questions. An innocent child's in front of you asking questions about what you believe will often show how incredibly insane you are, and how the things you often believe are unfounded. They're not in reality. One last thing I'll say before I go. Thank you all for your time. This went way, 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 way too long. But you disagree with anything that I believe, challenge me anytime. Don't have to be bad. Like, talk to me. I'm super open. Whatever I believe because I've given it a lot of time and thought. But that doesn't mean that I can't be swayed. Come on, bring it on. Dude, for all my flaws, again, I consider myself a good man with a good heart. And I got a great little doggy. Oh God, I messed up this thing again. Hey dog, can you give one quick look? I know, so sorry. So sorry. She's good, dude. Not cool. Love people enough. Thank you for your time. You guys take care. See you tomorrow.
Hey everyone, this is Micah from Love People Enough. Please consider signing up for our Patreon so we can continue to bring you hard-hitting episodes and grow our channel to reach the widest audience possible. Link below in the description.